Greetings, Guardians, my name is Byfear. So, with the end of the Season of the Witch, Eris Morn has turned the entirety of the Hive's leadership on its head. Savathun might have returned, and Eris might have briefly become the most powerful Hive god in existence, but the biggest change for the whole situation is for Xivu Arath, who has been rendered mortal. Without access to her throne world, Xivu is absolutely screwed. She's definitely not out of the fight, but I wanted to talk a little bit more about the knock-on effects of Eris's choice to banish her and what that'll really look like. Because yes, there are some immediate and pretty obvious effects, but there are also far-reaching possibilities that arise from this moment, and today I wanted to look into some of them. So, to begin with, the obvious surface-level things, Xivu Arath's newfound mortality has immediately made her the weakest Hive god. Whilst the obvious knock-on effect of Eris's choice is that Xivu Arath is now mortal, we shouldn't underestimate the fact that Xivu immediately went to ground after Eris banished her. You can tell that thanks to a little bit of seasonal dialogue from Ikora and Savathun.
My hidden are looking for Xivu Arath, but apart from lingering Wrathborn, it seems she's gone to ground.
Savathun's commentary on this matter in particular actually gives us a little bit more information as to why this is so important.
My sister feels her worm's hunger, gnawing away at her for running from us. She has to keep testing her strength if she doesn't want to be eaten alive. And she has no one left to love.
So, as it turns out, running from battle seems to have severely weakened Xivu, and this all makes a perfect degree of sense. To the best of our knowledge, the last time that Xivu retreated from battle was when she was fighting the Ecumene alongside Oryx and Savathun. That situation would eventually become so dire that Xivu allowed herself to be killed by Oryx so that he could ascend into the Taken King. Now though, she has nobody left to make war on that will be as forgiving. Not only will her next death be her last, but also it's meant that she's going to have to completely alter the way that she interacts with the world. Before, it would have been possible for her to stride across the worlds of her enemies and face their greatest champions in single combat. Now she can't necessarily take to the field because taking that risk is obviously too great, and she'll have to rely more heavily on the tribute from her brood as a result. Back in the ancient times of the Hive's lore that it's displayed in the Books of Sorrow, the Hive were starting to master sword logic, and in the process of this, they would destroy entire ships and war moons in their conflict against each other. They would inevitably die in the process, but would learn a great deal about their powers and how to best survive. Xivu can no longer take those risks anymore, and that not only hampers her gains in the short term, but also it means that in the long term she's not going to gain the extremes of knowledge that could have been found in this manner. She will never be able to learn from death in quite the same way. Immediately, there's also the fact that Xivu's hold on power is a lot more tenuous than it's ever been. The Hive constantly strive to anoint whoever is strongest, and I suspect that for Xivu's brood, there's going to suddenly be some questioning of the war god's own strength. The extent of this question might be limited to the minds of her most powerful ascendants, or it could spill out into actual challenges. I don't doubt that Xivu Arath would be able to see off any that oppose her, but the weakness that she displayed in running from combat will leave her rule disputed for the rest of her days. Xivu's personal fortunes, though, aren't the only change worth noting. One of the more immediate and obvious notes is that the sudden banishment of Xivu will shift the entire power balance amongst the Hive as a species. Xivu and the Witness-aligned Hive were probably the dominant bloc for the longest time, and are probably still the most numerous. Now though, with Xivu's banishment and some of their forces being in disarray, I imagine that it's Savathun and the Lucent brood who are in the ascent. Not only does Savathun still have her throne world, but Imaru is still alive. Savathun's power might have been somewhat sapped by Eris Morn, but the Witch Queen was swiftly brought back again by Imaru, and thus her potency has not wavered for more than what was necessary. Eris Morn, for but a moment, had the chance to claim ultimate power over the Hive, but her choice rejected the promised power of the sword logic, and that locked her out from running all of this as a Hive god of vengeance. Regardless, the loser in this situation inevitably is Xivu Arath, and if there is a winner amongst the Hive Guards, it is undoubtedly Savathûn. From here, this probably means we'll see the Lucent Brood and Darkness-aligned broods on somewhat equal footing from now on. Keep an eye on them both. Both have expended significant resources in the process of fighting this war, and neither of them is truly in an excellent position, but they both have enough power to pivot to other fronts of the war should they need to. There are, however, reasons why Xivu Arath will find pivoting just a little bit harder, and this is another far-reaching consequence of Eris's choice. Making her lose access to her throne world also changes the way that she conducts war with the whole of her brood. A method that she has used for a long time might now be defunct. Let me explain. When Xivu Arath arrived on Europa in the Season of the Seraph, and when she brought war to Torobatl, one of her greatest weapons was actually not a weapon at all, it was merely good logistics. It was her ability to bring her troops from the Ascendant space through a tear into whatever location they were fighting at. As a result, Xivu was able to mobilize her armies with lightning speed. This feeds into Xivu Arath's greatest asset, which we see in Europa thanks to some of the lore from the Season of the Seraph, the Black Terrace. This is Xivu's court, Xivu's throne world, the world that she takes with her wherever there may be war, and losing access to it was not only something which hampered Xivu's immortality, but also it put a massive hole in the logistics of her brood. Xivu Arath had become adept at using her powers to swiftly bring the tides of war through the Ascendant Realm into whatever space she was fighting via the Black Terrace. Xivu's plan in the Season of the Seraph was exactly this. We would enact a great act of war by using the War Sats, and in doing so, we would summon the Black Terrace above Earth. If we didn't do so, then the Hive and the Elixni and the Wrathborn would do so instead. This would then allow Xivu to move all of her forces above Earth and then invade. The logistical power of this is pretty obvious. With all her forces so close to Earth, the invasion would not only be overwhelming but swift. This is effectively what happened at Torobatl. Keitel, who at the time was not Empress but merely Princess, slew the Evakut general Umun Arath, the highest-ranking military figure in the Cabal Empire. All of this was a necessary component of a blood ritual that Savathûn had enacted, and had allowed Xivu Arath to essentially piggyback off of. This act of war and blood was enough to summon Xivu Arath, and thus Torobatl fell in an instant. Now that Xivu is banished from her throne world, I don't think she can enact this tactic anymore, or at least if she can, it's going to be a lot harder for her to coordinate. Whatever we lost by allowing the Witch Queen to run free, we also bought a remarkable bit of security for all of those who would oppose Xivu Arath, Earth and the Lost City included. She's long used the tactic of massing her forces in the Ascendant Plane so that she could release them in a single time and place to overwhelm her foes. It's possible that that isn't an option for her anymore. If so, she'll have to pick and choose where and when and how to deploy her forces much more carefully. Her use of the Ascendant Plane might need to focus around other muster points than her own throne world now. There are also two last far-reaching consequences of this banishment that I wanted to discuss. The first is that of the Cabal, and the second is that of the now vacant throne of the God of War. The effect that this will have on the Cabal conflict being operated by Keitel against the Hive is clear as day. Their prospect of retaking Torobatl now seems less like a distant dream and now appears like a more realistic campaign goal. For their homeworld to be retaken, they must defeat Xivu Arath's forces, and this likely means defeating the God of War themselves. Whilst their home might never truly be the same, as it may probably be twisted by Hive corruption now, I think it's entirely possible that they can take on Xivu Arath. The Hive God of War will still be a mighty foe to oppose. She is in particular still going to be able to gain might from acts of war, and so the conflict is one that needs to be approached in an asymmetric fashion if the Cabal are going to secure victory. However, they only need to kill Xivu once now. That in itself might make all the difference. But then, there's also this last intriguing factor, that Xivu has been banished from her throne world. The throne world itself is still out there, it doesn't just cease to exist, and as some of the Techeuns trained for the rescue of Mara Sov will know, it can be navigated to through the ley lines and the Ascendant Plane. We don't know the exact knock-on effects of having an empty throne in this place. The throne world of a Hive God in particular has never been vacated while the Hive God is still alive. But we do know a few things. First of all, we don't have a Hive God that's previously given us a massive sample of what could happen, but we do have an idea of what might happen when an enemy starts to take over another person's throne world, and that's all thanks to Mara Sov's own throne world. You may remember that Mara's throne world is now referred to as the Shattered Throne, and it was corrupted thanks to Oryx having taken her back at the Battle of Saturn. Mara's throne world was changed and corrupted, much as she was, and this is the clear result of an assault on a throne world itself. However, Eris may have left a similar mark upon the throne of the Hive God of War, meaning that there's some kind of twisted energy there too. It's likely that Xivu Arath's throne world is never going to be the same, but that's not the important point. Because the important point is not simply that Eris has banished Xivu and in the process has probably changed the throne world, it's also that such places can be usurped as well. If not in function, then at least as a mighty Ascendant Plane fortress. Dulinkaru took over the Shattered Throne in the aftermath of Riven's death, as a means of turning it into a place of power. And if we know something about the Hive spaces according to Toland, it's that the architecture of these places requires a strongest one who will claim the throne for themselves. We've seen this idea crop up a bunch of different times, even this season, with Guardians and of course also Eris Morn refusing to ultimately take up the mantle of the Taken King. But with Xivu's throne now empty, the question remains, who will fulfill the architecture of this space? Literally, who will fulfill its purpose? There is always meant to be a strongest one. It does make me remember back to the idea of something that Toland himself said long ago, words to the effect of, "Oh, and do let me know if a vacancy opens up." There's no way of knowing if there would be anyone powerful enough to take Xivu's throne world, or what they'd even be able to do with it, especially given that there would likely be Ascendant Hive better suited to rob Xivu of her position. We also can't be sure if this is the correct way to interpret how throne world spaces actually function. Everything that I just mentioned is speculative. The possibility is there. A rogue cyst in reality is waiting out in the universe, out in the Ascendant Plane, to be utilized by whoever has the vision to use it. We don't know how it would be usurped, we don't know the process used by Dulinkaru, but we know that it might be possible. It makes me wonder what happens if ever the Black Terrace is found, and who or what might be waiting there for us. If I had to take a stab at this, well, I mean, it is the throne world of the Hive God of War, so I imagine Kratos is there. Either way, thank you so much for watching. That's all from today. If you enjoyed the video, go ahead and leave a like, and also remember you can hit subscribe to keep up with Destiny content approaching the final shape. There is also clearly more stuff going on in the Season of the Witch that we've not uncovered yet, so stick around for that. There are more mysteries yet to reveal. Also, do note that you can leave your own thoughts and comments down below in the comments section. Is there another impact of Xivu Arath's banishment that I haven't mentioned here? Let me know what you think. But as per usual, know that your viewership, as always, is quite enough for me, and that in the meantime, my name is Byf. Parodacia ad Astra. I'll see you, Starside.